All right, let's call to order.
I thought we adjourned the meeting. More
This is
faith.
the City of Port Richey Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting for January 24th. At this time, I'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
Liberty and justice for all.
Good meeting.
And this time I'm looking, no, I see that, but I was looking at the board minutes on this. We'll do roll call first. I'll address the board minutes.
Chairman Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Chairman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
Member Todd McClary.
Here.
Member Linda Rodriguez. Here. Member Bill Colombo.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Duke.
Here. And looking for a motion to approve board minutes, and I had already addressed the adding it in, but that was only at the other meeting, not this meeting, so I don't need to do that. Okay. So looking for a motion to approve board minutes.
Motion approved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, any commentary from the general public? Nobody signed up, but you still have the right to speak by show of hands. Seeing no hands, any commentary from our city manager?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The only comment that I wanted to make from the board is I wanted to know if we could have a motion just to amend the sale of city-owned lots or business to include or read or consider the usage of that property outside of the basic sale. In other words, we can consider using it as a parking lot or anything else. And just the way that was written didn't comport to what we voted on. I think we voted on having it as a discussion with heirs since they're here.
Yes.
To either use it potentially as a parking lot and or some other use, or even a passive park or passive place to be. So I wanted to know if you guys wanted to amend that item of board business to either include that or make it that, which was the original.
Amend that to include it into the update of the Cody River Landing as a whole.
Okay.
I mean, that might include selling, it might include whatever, so it's all part and parcel.
Okay, we have a motion, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're gonna go to our first item on the board business, and that's gonna be the Cody River Landing update and discussion. I'm gonna pass that to Mr. Duke. Thank you for your introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we discussed 2 weeks ago, I've invited heirs to join us. Now, I believe Mr. Martin is going to present and bring us up to speed on the project. Mr. Martin.
Thank you for being patient with us. Our last meeting was longer than normal, and you've been waiting, so we
My
appreciate it.
pleasure, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Pleasure to be with you today. Chris Martin with Ayers Associates. My pleasure to provide an update on the Cody River Landing improvements. The project is currently in the permitting phase. We are permitting with 2 regulatory agencies, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, as well as the Florida Department of Transportation. We are happy to report we have received the final permit approval from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. Thus, that permitting is 100% complete with that agency. The FDOT has issued a request for additional information in order to approve the omission of the right turn onto Cody Avenue from southbound US 19. What the DOT has requested is a traffic study in order for them to approve that improvement. Given the cost of the traffic study and the time to obtain the study, it is our recommendation that we keep access to Cody Avenue in place as is the existing condition. But we welcome the council's prerogative on that improvement. Lastly, we are continuing coordination with Duke Energy on the lighting infrastructure. Duke is nearly complete with their photometric analysis of the lighting infrastructure, with the exception of Treadway Ave. It is Duke's desire to locate several of the light poles onto private property. So they're currently negotiating with the property owners on the north and south side of Treadway to locate, I believe, 4 light poles on private property. We expect an update from Duke by the end of this week, and we'll keep you informed on that determination. And with that, I open it up to questions.
On the issue with DOT, one of the things I wanted to know if it's possible, because I don't want to slow this project down where everything else looks like it's turning like it should. Is there any way to continue with this project pretty much as it sits? Obviously, phase 1 doesn't really have to do with that turn anyways, which will be the first part of the construction, I would presume, even though I think we're going to do it all in once. I think as a practical matter, that will go first, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
So the question that I have is can we do the traffic study and re-engage DOT to still change that right turn? Because I think it's a safety hazard, and I'm not okay letting that go because I think we owe it to our citizens, particularly ones that are going to be riding around on golf carts that can't get out of the way of people turning off 19, to not have that happen. So I think we have to follow through with that, but I don't want to slow the project down. Can we continue with the project and do a traffic study and engage DOT to get that accomplished?
Absolutely. We have a request into the DOT to confirm what the limits of that traffic study will be, and then we can report back to council on what those limits are, the cost of that study, including what traffic counts will be warranted, and the timing to complete the study.
And if it may help you, we've done a traffic study down there to determine the one-way, and it included future usage, and that was one of the first things that I think that we did when we were on the dais, the 3 of us. I don't think they were sitting here. And they had a recommendation not only for the entire loop, but they also analyzed that intersection, and I think they came up with the same conclusion that that was a safety hazard. Can we utilize a traffic study that's already been done that contemplated the future development there?
We have indeed issued that existing traffic study to the DOT, and they have returned a request for a new and updated study.
Okay, I just wanted to know if we could use that, so I appreciate you being on top of that.
Absolutely.
That was my main issue, because I'm not comfortable making that a one-way and allowing the golf carts there. If you have, I see cars turning off that street 30, 35 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, and there's no way a golf cart's going to get out of the way if that going on. It's just a matter of time before someone gets injured at that intersection. So I don't know if the rest of the diocese feels the same way, but I think we need to pursue that issue.
I think a lot of it is determined by what are the scopes of DOT's request for the traffic study, because if they want you to go up and down 19 on all those intersections, that's going to be a pricey traffic study.
Well, let's see what they have to say.
I guess we'll stick with the scope.
They're not going to do traffic studies.
So it's just one thing, that's 10 grand, 15 grand. If he's up and down all across, he's going to
75 grand without even blinking an eye.
Sounds like a fair range, Councilman.
And I think the other thing that I don't know if we can use is the county just did a traffic study, sit in on the MPO board because of all the deaths there. And I know that we allocated money for extra lighting and extra crosswalks and some other items up and down 19 between Newport, Richie, and our city. But the study was done by the county because it was DOT and the MPO board was involved in that. So I don't know if any of that can be utilized.
Was that study conducted more recently than the study?
It was just done because I think there were some homicides there that made the news, and I know that there are some resources that they put into it. So we may want to follow up with the county to see if they have any information that we can use.
Will do.
To assist with the DOT. I don't want to pay for it if the county's already done it or doing it. They made a big part of it.
We'll reach out to the county and assess the limits of that study and if it will be deemed viable for the DOT's desires.
Because they do kind of keep tabs on what's going on down 19, but that's only a county function, not what we do here in the city. So we may be able to get some information there. And then the other question I had is if we proceed where we're going now, and I know that there's some land transactions for light posts. I've talked to a lot of the different business owners down there just briefly to get an idea of where they were at with these projects. And and their consensus, along with most of the public, is, hey, can we get this thing moving? We want to get it developed and get it done. What's our time frame look like in terms of just getting out to bid, getting bid packages together at this point?
Once the lighting infrastructure is finalized, which we anticipate in the next week or two, pending the easement agreements from Duke. The plans are 100% complete. The SwiftMud permit is finalized. The last two pieces of the puzzle are the FDOT determination, which understood we can move forward on by omitting that right turn off 19, and no reason that the project can't go out to bid here within the next month, assuming Duke Energy's photometrics are complete and we come to an agreement with the easement.
Very well. Were there any questions from the rest of the dais here?
Nick Overbeck was here asking for the businesses, a workshop regarding this plan. They're the mainstay down there, so what is our plan?
Well,
Are we going to address it or not address it?
beneficiary, there is certainly not the main stakeholder.
Well, my take on that is I think if we're going to make changes to the codes down there and the issue is that, hey, that the codes are antiquated and need to be changed, I think that our procedures normally sitting where we sit is it would filter through the Board of Adjustments.
P and Z, yeah.
Right, so it filtered through the
So they were
board.
just asking for code and code changes and stuff? They weren't asking for input into this? I don't know, I'm asking.
They were talking about the WOD itself, the WOD as the overlay district. It's
Right.
a portion of our code.
Correct.
So there are things in the WOD that are arguably outdated.
Okay.
Since when it was written and as it is evolved. So they
Okay.
want to look at the WOD codes because
Okay.
there is some crazy stuff in there that really just doesn't fit anymore. That's why it should go through P and
Okay.
Z, because it's an overlay district under the overall, the existing.
Okay, so they weren't asking for input into the design, they were asking just for
No, they were specifically.
Okay.
talking about
analyze
the
everything
water
together.
code.
Okay, the code,
If I could,
I'm sure you want to put in some input in.
yeah, okay, that's fine.
When I met with the business owners 3 or 4 weeks ago, excuse me, it was to brief them on the plans, trying to play Mr. Martin, and we had the 90% plan in front of them. And they weren't asking for input into the design. The
Okay.
design's 90% done.
Yes.
It's now 100.
Right.
But they just want to know what's going on. And
Okay.
mostly, when are you going to start moving dirt? And,
Okay,
led to a lot of other questions.
thank you, that answered my
but-
question, thank you.
But yeah, they were not trying to have influence or input into
Okay.
what we're doing.
Thank
They
you.
want to know.
and then the other thing that they wanted clarification on that I didn't know the answer, but now that you're standing here, I can ask because I know that we originally talked about having down at the end, on the seaside, that little piece of property that we own, put like a little bus stop there where Uber, Lyft, we have public transit, whether we have a trolley or a bus system at some point where we tie into the county, down the road, but that would be, I think, where we talked about putting it. Was that in the current design still?
Indeed it is. There is an opportunity to provide a drop-off zone for Ubers at that location. That location is not a viable spot for a trolley the turn radius is too tight for a trolley to make it down that road and turn around. We have analyzed that corridor on the viability of a trolley making it around the one-way and the turn radiuses required, and a trolley can absolutely make the turn from Treadway on down to Bayview, and what appears to be the most viable location for a trolley stop would be in front of Nick's Park, and that's where we would recommend if the city does go down to accommodate a trolley.
I know the business has had a different issue than I did. I was looking at either trolley, Uber, Lyft, from just a public safety perspective, and maybe to alleviate some of the parking concerns down there. But the bottom line is you have an area where a lot of people, there's alcohol being served, there's bars, there's restaurants that serve alcohol. Having access to public transportation, I think, is something, for money, that I really want to look into. just from public safety perspective, so I didn't know where you guys stand
Have
on.
them park out of town and drive there.
What's that?
Have them park out of town and drive from there.
So I like the idea of having the setup for public transport, even if we don't have it now, but down the road, we're developing it now. It seems to make sense to contemplate that at this point. So I didn't know what the rest of the diocese's position was on that.
I like the idea, but I like to keep it separate. The trolley drop off at one location and then the Uber, taxi, Lyft, whatever else be at a different location. Those vehicles, when they stop, they're there waiting. A trolley, they're just gonna drop the passengers off, keep going, and we want to keep that flow moving along. Hopefully, we have something like that.
Indeed.
And the sale of the lot, well, the 2 lots that we've taken the homes down for, what do we have in the, I don't recall what we had in the plans for those. Do we have anything?
There are no improvements of those lots proposed on the current plans.
I'm sorry?
They're out of his scope.
Right.
But what I wanted to bring to the table is a discussion on, because when we originally purchased this property, in all fairness, it was before the two of you were on the dais. And I know that, I think it was Mr. Dittmer and at the time, Councilwoman Sorrell. I know Mr. Dittmer was adamant about we could get at least 60 or 70 cars and utilize that for parking, and that was kind of his direction when he was here. And I think there was some agreement on the dais that if there was ever a spot for some city parking, that's off the water, and we could certainly put some cars there. The problem that I have is when you have parking, you pour concrete and it's kind of a permanent fixture. So not only is the cost there, but to try and reuse that property may be a problem. My thought or suggestion was we could almost put the geo web down and make it a temporary parking area until we decide we want to sell it, we want to reappropriate it for something else, or we make it a permanent lot and then pay it if that's what we decide to do. But I think just utilize it in the short term for parking. I think it's probably viable to have them look at it to see
If I may say, you have a quarter acre, you're a civil engineer. You have a quarter acre, you typically get 20 to 25 spots per quarter acre, correct?
That sounds an approximate.
Typically get 20 to 25 spots per quarter acre of
And
parking.
that's what that lot is, a
And
quarter
those
of an acre?
lots are about a quarter, it's 0.33, slightly over a quarter. So you'll get about 20 to 25 spots. Is what we're talking.
But we were fighting over 9 spots in the original design on the street. So I mean, yeah, it's still better than no, right? If
No
I'm
matter what, you never have enough parking down there.
No, but to have a little bit extra now until we decide what we want to do, I
Turn it
think
into a park.
I'm okay with that too. But
Or
So-
brew.
I mean, a brewery. Yeah, let's put a drinking place down there.
Why do we do a brewery with a
Hold
park
on.
in the middle?
Hold on. This, the original idea for the waterfront overlay district, I know we've gotten away from it, but was that a little cracker town is turning into a bunch of watering holes. I'm not really inclined to put 2 more watering holes down there. That's my personal opinion. I'd rather see a park. It's the waterfront overlay district, and right now, unless you're into going out and eating at restaurants, which who can afford that hardly anymore, and drinking, nobody's going down there. It's not a waterfront district. It's what the businesses have now renamed it, the entertainment.
But let me weigh in. You have a waterfront park there, you have Nick's Park there, how many more parks are we gonna put in that
Waterfront
The
park
park is a parking lot for boats, that's not a park.
Let me weigh.
It's a boat ramp. I mean, if the county ever built a boat ramp, we could turn it into a real park. I'd love that, but we got still 2-3 years down the line.
but let me just weigh in for a minute. If the argument is, well, it's not big enough for a parking lot, how are you going to put a brewery in a building and have a business there and have any parking? It's just going to compound the problem. So it doesn't make sense to me to put a business there. If you're already saying there's a parking problem, why would we want to put another business there?
Because any business that goes there has to accommodate for parking. That's a code.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. That's code. Any use you put in there, there is a requirement of, you must have so many spaces for this use.
So-
If they don't have that, this man comes down and says, you don't have that use, you have to come up with parking.
How many
So
parking spots does Whiskey Joe have on that property? Or whatever that one is.
they made arrangements for it.
Whiskey Joe.
After the fact, a year after the fact.
It was part of their agreement for the business.
Joe got a variance
Well,
to use
look, I
on-site
can't talk
parking.
to variances on
They
that.
got a variance to use that lot for
That's
on-site
perfectly
parking.
legal.
Well, actually, it was kind of absurd, but they did get it. Now, I mean,
Every city does that though.
not like that.
I guess
As long as you have a parking agreement to satisfy your need, you are allowed to.
But I guess my point is to sell that property for another business and compound the parking problems doesn't make sense to me. So I think that leaves us as,
Compounding your parking problems though.
if you put a business and draw more people in and there's less parking,
But they have to accommodate their parking need.
what are they gonna do, build a garage?
They have to either come up with an agreement with an adjacent space to supply those parking spaces, but they either have to put in a parking garage and double decker. I do this for a living. Don't tell me about parking.
We had it elevated too.
Well, but my point is if parking's an issue, there's two things the city can do about it, because we actually control the properties. You can make it parking, or you can leave it open to where you're not drawing more people to compound the issue. So the idea of putting another business there when you have a parking problem already doesn't, to me, it's counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the issue before us right now, I guess, is are we wanting to pursue the idea of selling that property or not? And that's pretty much where we came into this.
Yes.
My discussion on that is just a hard no, because I think we need to
All
control
right,
that
is
property.
anybody in favor of selling that property right now?
So we're just gonna have another, I'm all
We don't have to do anything right now. That's the issue that came up. You know, that's the question at hand.
Do we want to consider selling that property? Do we want to give John the authority to look at selling that property?
If the answer is no, we're done here for now. We don't have to figure out what to do with that property right now.
I say no because it's a valuable piece of property and it would be making it pace without a lot of.
I mean, I don't
research.
And again,
We need a lot more research.
I don't think it was anybody's intention when you bought that property and raised those buildings was to flip. I don't recall that ever coming up with a conversation.
The intent was to get the non-conforming use to the space.
Yeah.
That was the intent of doing it. We have now satisfied that requirement. We've demoed the two residential structures that were there. You can never put another residential structure there again, because now it's non-conforming. We satisfied the non-conforming issue with those two spaces, and we got rid of two derelict structures. That was the intent of purchasing those properties.
I agree with that, but let me go from here. We're developing an area that we have very little control over any of the land, okay? Why would we want to sell a parcel when we're trying to develop that area that we may be able, or have to utilize? And then DOT comes in and says, hey, you can turn there, but you may have to shift the road, you may have to have a lane somewhere.
We may have
So-
more property come on the market that we want to buy and that's contiguous to, you know, why limit our options right
I
now?
didn't realize the city of Port Richey was in the land development business.
Well, I mean, it always was the intent we'd have city parking down there. There's a lot of parking down there right now. It just doesn't happen to belong to us.
Right, so, but we really don't own much down there, and I think it's beneficial to the folks that live here for us to be able to control that property and have something down there. And the idea of selling it just isn't in the cards from my perspective. I think there's too much we can do with that to help the citizens.
Once you sell it, you can't get it back.
So I think we're 4-1 now on the sale. Is that kind of where we're at here?
Well, not moving forward.
Not today.
Not today.
Okay. So then the question is, do we want to engage heirs to see if we want to use it for even just temporary parking for now, or if we want to just leave it open and use it as a park?
Unless there's a pressing need to do that. I don't necessarily need to do that right now. I mean, it's there, it's clear. If we're gonna use it, if we're gonna do a, quick and dirty geo-web parking down there, well, that's not hard to do and doesn't take a long time.
Just as a reminder though, if you remember what Whiskey Joe's with the quick and dirty geo-web, that turned into a muddy mess really
Well,
quick.
I'm not saying do it the way, all they did was lay down some plastic fencing. I mean, that wasn't even geo-web as far as I was concerned. I mean, good word.
But, and
Mr. Kinsella.
Stop talking so much.
No, I would motion that we adjourn.
Thank you.
Motion adjourned is not debatable.
I seconded it.
Mr. Matthew, thank you very much. This is your last meeting.
no, wait, that's the old business before we adjourn.
A motion to adjourn is
Thank
not
you.
debatable.
Thank you for being so patient with us.
But it has to be voted. It's gotta be voted on.
We didn't vote.
We have to.
I have one last thing that I want to do here.
We have to vote.
He has to recognize the motion, on a motion.
We're not recognizing the motion yet. There's something that's important. And it's important because I wanted to recognize our city attorney. He's been instrumental to the city for such a long time. For the last 8-10 years, if you ask somebody what's going on in the city, what city's direction going, this man knew the answer, whether you were in a council meeting or just walking around the courthouse. And for all the time and energy that he's put in, and we have short memories. I mean, they come in and try and close the city, and he's standing in front of the camera, illustrating why we shouldn't close the city, saving the city. The market crashes, he's running around closing accounts so we don't lose money as a city. He served as a city manager in the past. And I think that you can't put enough words on how much Jim's done for the city. So I wanted to recognize him and thank him. And it's bitter for all of us, but sweet for him because I think he's moving towards retirement.
I've never seen him so happy.
But for the rest of us, it's fairly bitter because he's been instrumental. And I think any one of us can trust his opinion when we pick up the phone and call him. And that's what we've always needed as in terms of an attorney in the city. That having been said, I wanted to thank you for all the time and energy that you put in. And I want to wish you the best moving forward.
Thank you, Scott.
I'd like to thank you and everyone that sat in those chairs as the city manager as well as the council people, and for giving me the opportunity to represent the city. And one thing I assure you is that at the present time, I do not have any confidential or documents at my house or garage, okay?
You need to go check that closet.
We'll let the chief decide that.
Chief, go check that closet.
We had a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.